Zara Whitmore didn't mean to drop her phone in the fountain, she meant to throw a coin in. Not a $700 mistake. "Oh no, 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 no," she gasped, staring in disbelief as her phone slipped from her hand, bounced once on the marble edge and plopped into the fountain with a splash that felt louder than it should have been. She darted forward, leaning dangerously over the edge as if she could somehow snatch it back out of the water with sheer willpower. "Come on," she muttered. "Please float or magically grow legs or need a hand," a deep voice asked behind her. She spun around, nearly slipping on the wet stone. Standing there in a navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent was a man who looked like he'd walked straight out of a cologne ad. His dark brown hair was pushed back, shirt collar open just enough to look effortless, and his eyes sharp, hazel, and catching the sunlight were locked on her with curiosity. She gestured helplessly at the fountain. "My phone, it dove in." He stepped closer, peering into the water. "I see it. iPhone?" "Yeah, and my entire life is on there, so if you know how to fish." Before she could finish, he was already taking off his blazer, tossing it onto a nearby bench. She blinked. "Wait, you're not actually going in there, are you?" He rolled up his sleeves, loosened his watch, and crouched at the edge. "Do you have a better idea?" Zara opened her mouth, then closed it. "No, but you're wearing like designer everything," he shrugged. "It's just water." With one smooth motion, he plunged his arm into the fountain, water splashing up onto his sleeve. A moment later, he pulled out her phone, dripping and pathetically blinking. "Don't turn it on yet," he said, handing it to her. "Let it dry first." She stared at him. "You just saved my phone. And soaked my shirt," he added with a grin. Zara laughed, a breathless, surprised sound. "I owe you big time. I'll collect someday," he said, picking up his blazer. "Name's Silas Ashford." Zara blinked. That name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. Zara Whitmore." "Well, Zara Whitmore," he said, his smile tilting just slightly. "Try not to throw anything else into the fountain." Later that day, Zara sat in her tiny apartment, wrapped in a towel with rice poured all over her counter, her phone nestled inside the bowl like a sad little potato. She still couldn't stop thinking about him. Silas Ashford, he didn't give her his number, didn't ask for hers, just saved the day and walked away like some kind of suit-wearing superhero, and that should have been that. Except 2 days later, she walked into the museum where she worked front desk, nothing glamorous, and there he was, Silas. Wearing another suit, this one charcoal gray, talking to the museum director like he owned the place. "Oh my God," Zara whispered under her breath. He saw her. His brows lifted with recognition and something else. He walked straight over. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, glancing at her name tag. "Zara." She tried not to panic. "I work here." He nodded once. "I'm donating a piece to the museum." "Thought I'd come see where it's going." She blinked. "You're donating art?" "Technically, my foundation is, but yes." Zara stared at him. "Wait, the Ashford Foundation?" "That's me." Her jaw dropped. "You're the Ashford?" He looked amused. "Guilty?" "Oh, wow." "Okay." She tried to gather her thoughts. "You're a millionaire." He tilted his head. "I guess so." "You guess so?" "I stopped counting after the first 10 million, he said casually. She coughed. "No big deal," he smiled. "I wanted to thank you, by the way." She frowned. "For what?" "For making my week more interesting. I haven't fished anything out of a fountain in years." She laughed again, and it made her cheeks warm. He looked too good in that suit, too confident, too out of her league. "I'd like to take you to dinner," he said suddenly, her breath caught. "What? Dinner with me? No fountains involved?" Zara blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "You're funny, chaotic in a charming way, and you didn't recognize me, which is refreshing." She hesitated. "You're serious?" "Very." Zara swallowed. "Okay. But no fancy places." He grinned. "No promises." He picked her up in a sleek black Mercedes that night. Zara wore the only dress she owned that didn't have a coffee stain on it, her nerves bouncing all over the place. When he opened the car door for her, she caught his scent, clean, expensive, something like cedar and citrus, and her heart did a weird little flip. "You look beautiful," he said simply. She sat down before her legs gave out. "Thanks, you look like you stepped out of a Vogue spread," he chuckled, pulling into the street. "I clean up okay." He drove them to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city skyline, the kind that didn't have prices on the menu. Zara stared at the view. "You said no fancy places," he glanced at her. "I said no promises." She tried to act cool, but the truth was he made her feel like she belonged there, like this wasn't some mistake or a joke. Like maybe, just maybe, a girl like her could sit across from a millionaire and hold her own. Over dinner they talked. Really talked. About her dream to open her own gallery someday. About his childhood and how he hated being treated like a walking wallet. About art and travel, and how he once accidentally bought a goat at an auction in Morocco. Zara laughed until her sides hurt. And by dessert, something had shifted. He looked at her across the table, his expression softer now. "I wasn't planning on meeting anyone," he said, voice low, "but I'm glad I met you." She swallowed hard. "I wasn't planning on dropping my phone. I'm glad you did." Their eyes locked, and Zara realized he wasn't playing. Not even a little. This man was falling for her, and she was starting to fall right back. Rain streaked down the cafe window in rhythmic trails as Zara stirred her coffee, watching the afternoon fade into a gray blur. She hadn't seen Silas since the rooftop dinner 4 nights ago, and despite herself, her thoughts kept drifting back to him, his quiet confidence, the way he listened like every word she said mattered, and the way his eyes lingered on her like she was something rare. A chair scraped across from her. She looked up, startled. Silas. Hair damp from the rain, coat already removed, he slid into the seat opposite her like he'd been coming to this cafe for years. "Didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't," she said, unable to stop the smile tugging at her lips. "Well, maybe a little." "I was nearby," he said, glancing at the cup in front of her. "Mind if I join you?" "You already did." Something flickered across his face, relief maybe. "I was hoping you'd say that." Zara leaned back slightly. "You don't strike me as the kind of guy who hopes. You strike me as the kind who decides." He gave a brief laugh. "You're not wrong, but you're not exactly predictable." She sipped her coffee. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "It's the opposite," he said, shaking water from his sleeves. "I've been around people who do nothing but agree. It's exhausting. I find agreeing with people makes my skin itch," she said lightly. "So we'll get along just fine." A waiter passed by and Silas ordered black tea without checking the menu. Zara tilted her head. "You don't ask what they have." "I usually know what I want before I walk in." Her brow rose. "Do you do that with everything?" He met her eyes. "Only the important things." She felt her pulse skip, and she hated how easily he could do that. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again," she said, setting her cup down. "I was hoping I would," he said simply, "but I didn't want to push. You don't seem like someone who waits for things." "I don't," he said, "but you're not a thing." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, like the space between lightning and thunder. She cleared her throat. "So, did your art piece get mounted?" He nodded. "They're unveiling it next week at a private event. I have to give a little speech, pretend I'm more invested in the public perception than I actually am." "You don't like attention." "I don't mind it, I just don't trust it." Zara leaned forward, intrigued. "Why?" "Because attention isn't the same as connection. Most people want something from me. Or they want to be seen with me." She studied him for a moment. "So why me?" His gaze didn't waver. "Because you didn't want anything." "That's not true," she said. "I wanted my phone out of a fountain." He smiled at that. A real smile, not the practiced kind she'd seen him give others. The waiter returned with his tea and a small saucer of lemon slices. Silas squeezed one into his cup, stirring once. "Tell me something you haven't told anyone," he said. Zara blinked. "That's intense." "You can lie if you want." She tapped her fingers on the table, then looked up. "I almost ran away when I was 17. I got as far as the bus station with a duffel bag and $60. Then I saw a mom crying with her kid on the bench and realized I didn't want to leave, I just didn't want to feel invisible anymore." Silas didn't speak for a long time. "That's not something you lie about," he said finally. "Your turn," she challenged. "Tell me something real." He hesitated, then set his spoon down. My father didn't want me to take over the family foundation. He wanted me to go into politics. He believed visibility was everything. I chose privacy, and he didn't speak to me for 2 years. Zara's voice softened. Did he ever come around? He passed away before he could. Silas's hand curled around his cup. Sometimes I think he still wouldn't have. They fell into a quiet understanding, the air between them heavier now, but not unpleasantly so. I'm sorry, she said. I'm not anymore. You can't spend your life apologizing for choosing the wrong kind of success. Zara studied him. You're different than I expected. He looked amused, disappointed. No, she shook her head, just surprised. You're not who I thought a millionaire would be. I'm not who most people think I am, he said. That's the point. Her eyes narrowed. So what's the real you like? He leaned across the table, voice low. Still figuring that out. But I know I want to find out with someone who doesn't care about what I own. Zara's heart thudded in her chest. I can't promise I won't be impressed by it. I mean that Mercedes had seat warmers that made me question my entire life. He laughed, and the tension shattered. I have a friend hosting an exhibit this weekend, he said. I'd like you to come with me. She hesitated. Is it going to be one of those events where everyone's wearing structured blazers and using words like juxtaposition in sentences? Very likely. She leaned back. Then I'm in. But only if you promise not to abandon me halfway through while someone named Bryce cornered me about postmodernism. Deal, he said. And if Bryce even breathes in your direction, I'll introduce him to my least favorite sculpture. As she stood to leave, Silas reached out, gently brushing his fingers against hers. Zara, she looked up. I don't meet people like you. Ever? She wanted to say something clever, something that would keep her grounded, but all she could do was nod because for the first time in a long time she felt seen, and that terrified her in the most exhilarating way. Zara adjusted the strap of her purse as she stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the polished stone of the gallery entrance. She hadn't expected to arrive in a vintage Bentley or be greeted by a staff member who opened the door with a quiet nod and murmured, "Mr. Ashford is inside." But then again, she hadn't expected any of this. Inside, the gallery was a masterpiece in itself. Soft jazz hummed through the air, champagne flutes clinked, and clusters of impeccably dressed attendees murmured about brushstrokes and themes. Spotlights illuminated large canvases, each one more abstract than the last. Zara felt her pulse quicken not because of the art, but because Silas was standing across the room, deep in conversation with an older woman in a silk pantsuit. He spotted Zara immediately. His posture shifted. He excused himself with a gracious nod and crossed the space with purpose. "You came," he said, his gaze moving over her like a secret he was learning to keep. "I told you I would," she replied, lifting her chin. "But if I hear the word aesthetic dichotomy more than once, I'm leaving." "Fair," he said, offering his arm. "Let's make a game of spotting the most pretentious phrase of the night." As they moved through the gallery, Zara noticed how people turned to glance at them, some with curiosity, some with recognition, and a few with open surprise. She leaned in slightly. "Is it just me, or are people staring? They're curious," Silas said. "They're used to seeing me alone. So I'm a novelty. You're the only person in this room I actually want to be standing next to." Before she could answer, a man with silver hair and a forced smile approached them. "Silas." "Didn't realize you'd brought company tonight." Silas's expression didn't shift. "Zara, this is James Rowe, old family friend." Zara extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." Rowe's handshake was cold and brief. "Likewise." "A pleasure." His eyes lingered on Zara a moment too long before turning back to Silas. "We should catch up soon. There are some board matters we need to discuss." "Send something through my office," Silas replied, voice clipped. Rowe gave a tight nod and walked away. Zara exhaled. "He seems fun." "He's a vulture in custom tailoring," Silas muttered. "He's been circling the foundation since my father died." "Is that why you don't come to these often?" "Yes, and because no one here would dive into a fountain for someone else." Zara laughed, and he relaxed again. They wandered through the exhibit, pausing before a large canvas filled with jagged color blocks. "What does this say to you?" he asked. That the artist was angry and possibly allergic to subtlety, he chuckled. "You'd terrify half my board with honesty like that." "Good," she said. They could use it. As they leaned closer to inspect a sculpture made from shattered mirrors, a woman with glossy black hair approached them. Her dress shimmered like mercury, and her smile was razor-sharp. "Silas, I didn't expect to see you with someone." He barely moved. Clara turned to Zara, eyes calculating. "And you are Zara," she said. "I work at a museum, not this one." Clara's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How quaint." "Clara curated this exhibit," Silas said. "We dated briefly." Clara's gaze never left Zara. "I suppose you're his latest philanthropic project." Zara tilted her head. "Only if rescuing phones from fountains is tax-deductible." Clara's lips parted, but Silas spoke before she could respond. "Clara, I think you're needed by the installation room." There was talk of a lighting issue. Clara's expression tightened. "Of course." Once she was gone, Zara exhaled. "I liked her. She was warm." "She's used to being the most dangerous person in the room," Silas said. "You threw her off balance." "I wasn't trying to, I know." That's what made it effective. They stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the city, the lights below blinking like constellations. The air was crisp, scented faintly with rain. Zara leaned on the railing. "You really don't belong in there, do you?" "Not anymore," he said. "I'm not interested in preserving legacies I didn't build. I want to create something that matters." She turned to look at him. "Then do it." He studied her for a moment. "You make it sound simple. You're one of the few people with the power to actually change something." "That's a lot of pressure, but it's also a lot of freedom." Silas stepped closer. "You challenge me every time we talk. Because I don't care who your father was, I know. That's why I can breathe when I'm with you." Zara's throat tightened. "You barely know me. I know that when I'm around you, I stop performing." The sky opened overhead, not with a storm, but with a soft drizzle that painted the city in silver. Neither of them moved. "You keep doing this," she said. "Doing what?" Looking at me like I'm about to disappear. Silas lowered his voice. "Because I've never met anyone who made me afraid of losing something real." She swallowed, eyes never leaving his. "So don't lose it." He took her hand. "I won't." "Unless you want me to." "I don't." The rain misted around them, but neither stepped back. They stood on the balcony as if the world inside didn't exist, the city below irrelevant. Silas leaned in, close enough she could feel the warmth of him. "Zara. Yes, I don't believe in fate. But I'm starting to believe in you." And when he kissed her, it wasn't tentative or rushed. It was confident, certain, and laced with something neither dared say aloud yet, but both felt in every breath. By the time they returned inside, her heels were damp, his collar slightly askew, and the way they looked at each other had changed entirely. Something had shifted, and neither of them wanted to go back. Zara stood at the top of the museum staircase, her fingers tight around the clipboard she'd been clinging to all morning. The gala was in full swing below a swirl of designer gowns, champagne flutes, and curated conversations floating up from the grand atrium. The Ashford Foundation's new wing was officially open, and tonight was its unveiling. She should have been proud. She'd coordinated half the event, worked with the exhibit's team day and night, and even convinced the board to feature emerging local artists. But all she could focus on was the fact that Silas hadn't arrived yet. A familiar voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you trying to will him into existence?" Zara turned to see her best friend, Liana, eyeing her knowingly while adjusting the strap of her satin jumpsuit. "I'm not waiting," Zara said quickly. "I'm just watching from above." Liana raised an eyebrow. "You're standing in heels for over an hour because the view's good," Zara sighed. "I didn't think I'd be this nervous." "Why?" "He's seen you covered in paint and chasing pigeons out of the courtyard. This is different. This isn't just us anymore. This is his world," Liana softened. "You're not crashing it, Zara. You built part of this one yourself." Before Zara could respond, the crowd shifted below. Heads turned. Cameras clicked. Silas had arrived, and he wasn't alone. He walked in flanked by two men in tuxedos, but it wasn't the company that caught Zara's breath, it was him. He wore a midnight blue suit with a subtle sheen, tailored within an inch of perfection. But it wasn't the suit that stopped the room. It was the way he moved through it, unhurried, composed, and with purpose. Then he looked up. Their eyes met across the mezzanine, and in that one glance everything else fell away. He didn't need to push through the crowd. The space parted for him like he'd commanded it, and in a way he had. He took the stairs two at a time, ignoring the greetings of donors and the polite attempts to engage him. Zara didn't speak, neither did he. He stopped just in front of her, his tie slightly askew from the breeze outside. "You look like you curated the stars tonight," he said. She blinked, caught somewhere between disbelief and something warmer. "That's a ridiculous thing to say." "But true." She let out a breath, eyes scanning his face. "You're late." "I had to pick something up," he said. "And I wanted to be the last thing you saw walk in." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to know none of this matters to me without you in it." She swallowed hard. "You shouldn't say that unless you mean it." "I haven't said a single thing I didn't mean to you." Zara looked down at her clipboard, then back at him. "I've worked 100 events like this, and I always felt like a background prop. Tonight's different." He tilted his head. "Because you're the centerpiece. Because this time I let someone see me." Silas reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim, velvet box. "This is why I was late." He opened it, revealing a delicate bracelet, thin gold with a single charm, a small engraved fountain. Her breath caught. "It's not flashy," he said, "but I wanted you to have something that reminded you where this started." She touched the charm, voice barely a whisper. "It's beautiful." "Like the moment you dropped your phone," he said. "Utter chaos. And the best thing that's ever happened to me." "I wasn't trying to make a scene," she said quietly. "You didn't. You made a life." Something shifted behind them, an announcement over the mic, calling Silas toward the stage for his speech. He glanced at the crowd, then back at her. "Come with me?" "What?" "I don't want to go up there alone," he said. "I don't want to stand in front of them and pretend that any of this happened without you." Zara hesitated. "What would I even do?" He extended his hand. "Just stand next to me." "That's all I've ever needed." The room quieted as the two of them stepped up to the podium together. Whispers rippled through the crowd, but Silas didn't acknowledge them. He spoke calmly, clearly, with none of the rehearsed polish she'd seen in others. He spoke about art that wasn't just valuable but necessary, about building a space where stories could be told without permission. And then he turned to her. "This wing is dedicated to creation. It's fitting, because I've been creating something new to a life that includes love, purpose, and the courage to let go of what I was raised to be." Zara stood frozen, her heart hammering. "I never thought a woman fishing her phone out of a fountain would be the one to change my life. But she did. So tonight, I want to say this in front of everyone who's ever expected something from me." He took a step closer. "I don't care about legacy. I care about you, Zara, and if you'll have me, I want to build something with you that's worth more than all of this combined." The room was silent. Zara stared at him, stunned. Then she leaned in, her voice clear. "You're insane, completely. And you're serious." As a man who's never felt more certain, she reached for his hand. Then yes, applause erupted, but it didn't reach them. Silas leaned in and kissed her, not a grand performance, but a quiet, certain promise. Later that night, long after the guests had left and the lights dimmed, they stood alone in the now empty gallery. The quiet was comforting. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "What happens now?" Zara looked up at him, her fingers still wrapped around the charm on her bracelet. "We live. And they did together." Zara's fingers trailed over the glass as she walked through the now fully open Ashford wing, the morning sun slanting through the tall windows and casting golden light across the polished floors. The museum was quiet at this hour, save for the soft footsteps of the early staff prepping for the day. It had been 2 weeks since the gala, and in that time, everything had shifted. Silas had kept his promise, he hadn't pulled back, hadn't become distant now that the world knew. If anything, he'd stepped in closer. publicly and privately. She paused in front of a painting, an abstract swirl of color, newly acquired and mounted with a small plaque beneath it. Donated by the Ashford Foundation in collaboration with Zara Whitmore. She didn't need to look twice to remind herself it was real. It still didn't feel like something she'd have once dared to dream, but it was here, and she'd earned it. Behind her, familiar footsteps echoed. "You're early," Silas said, his voice lower in the stillness. "I could say the same to you. I had a meeting with the city planners at 8. I left as soon as I could." She turned to face him. "Everything okay?" He stepped closer, his tie slightly loosened, his brow relaxed. "Better than okay. The city approved the proposal." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "They approved the grant and the location. Construction will start by fall." Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "You're actually building it." "We're building it," he corrected. The community arts center, they'd talked about, one that would give space to young, underrepresented artists to create, learn, and exhibit, was no longer just an idea. She pulled back just enough to see his face. "This is going to change lives." "So did you," he said, brushing her cheek with his thumb. "Starting with mine." Her heart thudded once hard. "Silas, I want to ask you something," he interrupted, his hand slipping into his pocket, her breath caught. "If you're about to propose in the middle of the gallery, I'm not," he said, eyes dancing with something unspoken. "That comes later." She narrowed her eyes. "What?" "I bought something for you," he said, pulling out a small, folded envelope. "Technically, I bought it for us. But you're the reason it exists." She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling. Inside was a deed to a building. She looked up, stunned. "This is the brownstone on East 73rd. It's yours. It's going to be our first gallery. No board of directors, no donors swaying the exhibits. Just art, just us." She stared at the paper in her hands, then back at him. "You bought me a building." "I bought us a future," he said. "You gave me the first piece. I just want to keep building around it." Zara didn't trust her voice, so she kissed him slowly, deliberately, until her thoughts quieted and the world narrowed to his arms around her. Later that day, on the rooftop Silas had reserved exclusively for lunch, she sat barefoot, curled beneath a linen throw as he uncorked a bottle of wine. The skyline stretched on, but she only noticed the way he watched her, like she was the view. "I've been thinking," she said between sips. "We should name the gallery something unconventional, like Whitford." He blinked. "That's actually perfect. It's a mix of both of us, just like everything else now." "I like the sound of that," he said. "Whitford." They fell into a comfortable silence, the breeze warm and steady. "I thought I knew what I wanted," Zara said finally. "Before I met you, I thought I had to play small, that dreams like mine didn't belong anywhere but inside my head." Silas's voice was quiet. "And now I know I was just waiting for the right person to believe in them with me." He leaned in, brushing her temple with a kiss. "You were never small. The world just tried to tell you that. And now you're carving your name into it," he said. Letter by letter. A week later, she stood in front of the newly painted door of the brownstone. The words Whitford Gallery gleamed in metallic gold across the glass. Inside, the floors were dusty, the walls half-finished, and there wasn't a single painting hung yet. But it was theirs. Silas came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "Still think I'm insane?" he asked. "Absolutely," she said, grinning over her shoulder. "But now I'm the co-founder of your insanity. Then we're doing something right." He kissed her there on the steps of their future, and neither of them looked back. Months passed. The gallery opened, and the first exhibit sold out its opening weekend. Zara's name appeared in industry articles, but she kept her focus on the artists, on the kids who walked in wide-eyed and left inspired. Silas continued his work with the foundation, now with a new wing dedicated to community-led projects. The Arts Center broke ground before the year's end. And on a quiet Sunday morning in the garden behind the brownstone, Zara found a note tucked inside a sketchbook Silas had left on the table. It read simply, "Marry me, no spotlights, no stage. Just us and everything we're building." She found him in the kitchen, barefoot, flour on his hands from half-finished pancakes. Yes, she said, he didn't need to ask what she meant. They married the next spring in the garden. No headlines, no press. Just a string quartet, a cluster of close friends, and vows that had nothing to do with legacy and everything to do with love. Zara stood in her dress, barefoot on the grass, and promised to love him not for the world he came from, but for the one they created together. Silas promised to never let her forget that she was the first person to see him not as a name, not as a title, but as a man who needed to be chosen for who he truly was. And she did, every day, for the rest of their lives.